Welcome to Bob Cargill's Marketing Show, a ridiculously awesome podcast bursting with insightful commentaries and intriguing conversations on the topics and issues that are on the minds of marketers, advertisers, social media, and PR professionals today. Hey, everybody, this is Bob Cargill from Bob Cargill's Marketing Show. Hey, I hope you are all happy, healthy, safe, and sound. You know how much I care about your well-being. I care about everybody's well-being, including myself. I have to look after myself. We all have to look after ourselves and one another. That's the most important thing. It really is. And then comes everything else. And what everything else includes today for me is my podcast, Bob Cargill's Marketing Show. It's May 26, 2023. And we're talking about episode 173. Cannot believe that. Over 5 years have I been doing this. And sometimes I do monologues. I've been doing the monologues quite a bit the last year or two. I also, as you know, do a lot of those short sound bites, 2-3 minutes long, lessons, case studies, etc. But I love the interviews, the best. The interviews are awesome. I've probably done, I'm guessing, 50 plus of them. And it always gives me time to get to know people, usually who I already know, but I get to know them so much better. And they're people that I really want my audience to get to know, because I think these people are very, very, very special, usually in the marketing, the social media world in which I work, in which I earn my livelihood. And today, nothing. Let's just say this is just another really special person that I know. I can call a colleague. I work with Kim at Suffolk University. We're both professors there, adjunct professors. But in terms of it, Kim fits right in under the aegis of people I think super highly of, people I've wanted to have on my podcast for a long time. And when I asked her, I said, I can't believe I haven't asked you to be on my podcast sooner. Hey, everybody, this is Kimberley Ring, Kim Ring, and she has her own agency, Ring Communications. As I already said, she works at Suffolk University like I do as an adjunct professor. I looked into your background, Kim, a little bit further this morning on LinkedIn. And so I can say, unless, correct me if I'm wrong, that you're a graduate of Florida State University and Emerson University in Boston, and unbelievable background. But more importantly, unbelievable person is Kim Ring. Say hello, Kim, to everybody.
Hi, and Bob, you said we were colleagues, but I think you left out that we're friends. So I think that should come first, and everything else should follow suit after that.
Love that. I agree. I'd like to say that we're very, very, very good friends, even though we've only known each other a couple of years, thanks to Suffolk University. I'm going to get to know you even more today, Kim, and I'm so happy. Anyone who's watching, anyone who's listening will get to know you a lot more. I start off every one of my podcasts, Kim, with just an open-ended question, and you can take this in any direction you'd like. You can talk for 30 seconds or even 3 minutes plus, whatever. Tell us about your background, your journey from, you can take it all the way back to birth till now, or once you started your career, or just give us an encapsulation of who is Kim Ring.
Yeah, I mean, it's my journey's been interesting. I always, I loved school. I was not the best student, but I always loved school. I've always loved learning and all of that. So I went through high school, and after high school, I went to Seton Hall University in New Jersey for my freshman year of college. I was only 17. I'd never lived away from home. It was a really challenging school. I had to work, I paid my way through college, so I had to work. So I worked at the mall. So, at 17, living in New Jersey by yourself, taking the bus, towns away to go to the mall, as much as I loved school and I loved being around people, it was just it was a lot. So after, my freshman year of college, which is really when I started kind of coming, a little bit into myself, I took a year off and I worked in a restaurant, which I still attribute most of the skills that I have, despite going to college, going to grad school, working so many years, to the things that I did learn in the hospitality field. So for that year, which back then they weren't called gap years, and I praise our students all the time for rebranding that. When I took the year off, my parents were, oh, she's dropping out. She's probably not going to go back. If you take a year off, you're never going to go back. The mentality around taking a year off to figure out kind of who you are so you can be a better student didn't really exist. So after a year, I decided to go back to school, and I went down to Florida State, which is one of the places that I really wanted to go. It was where I'd intended to go after high school. But again, I was really young. My birthday fell at that weird time where everybody else was 18. I was still 17, and I wasn't ready at that point. So after a year of working and kind of figuring it out, I felt like I was ready to go back to school. So I picked up, I moved down to Tallahassee, and I pretty much stayed there for the remaining 2.5 years of college. I came back here and there, but I really tried to lean in, because like I said, I really did love school. Even if I wasn't, even if I was a BC, sometimes A student, the environment, the people, everything about it, I just loved. So while I was at Florida State, I kind of knew I was going to be good. I mean, I've always been good at people. I just didn't know really what a career being good at people kind of looked like. And when I was at Florida State, I started really kind of trying to figure out, okay, what else are my skills and how do they all align? I was a really good writer, and I still love to write. And Bob, we're so busy, I wish I wrote more. I wish I went back to that, where I was journaling all the time and doing all those things. And I was a really good writer. So I had originally said, you know what, I think I'd be a really good speech writer. So I kind of started off at Florida State. I was like, my path is I'm going to be a political speech writer. I remember hearing the Ronald Reagan speech after the Challenger shuttle blew up and slipped the surly hands of earth to touch the face of God. And there were just like things that stuck with me, and I wanted to be that. However, I took one political science class and realized I knew nothing about government. I didn't like it. It wasn't my thing. So I started looking at, okay, so I'm good with people. I'm a good writer. I'm a good storyteller. What does that leave for me? So when I was at Florida State, that's when I discovered public relations. And I realized that it was this ability to tell people's stories and help amplify people's stories. So I leaned into that, loved it. I loved everything I was learning, even though it was super high level at that point. I loved it. So I majored in public relations. I graduated. I came home, and I tried really hard, to get a job at a PR firm here in Boston. I had a great internship in Florida. I was working for the Florida Governors Alliance for the advancement of people with disabilities, and I was in their marketing department. And I thought, for sure, I have this advantage now. It's going to help me when I go home. But every PR firm that I interviewed at just said no. They said, you don't have enough experience. And I remember being, 22 and saying, well, how do I get experience in a PR firm if no PR firm
That's
will
their
hire me?
loss, Kim.
The story gets better. And sometimes I feel bad telling it, because I'm not trying to put anything in a bad light. But the reality is I didn't get a job for 1.5 years because I wanted a PR firm. I wanted PR, and nobody would give me that opportunity. The whole time I'm bartending, right? And I'm meeting people, and I'm making connections, and I'm doing all of these things, trying to get a job. And it was like a struggle. After about 1.5 years, somebody I worked with, their friend was over at a real estate developer. They needed a marketing admin. At that point, I said, I guess I just have to take anything, right? Which is, again, a mentality that existed for our generation. And I'm glad, hopefully, that our students don't ever have to feel that way. So I took an entry-level job, and I had a great boss. He was awesome. But the job itself just was really it was unfulfilling. I wasn't doing what I wanted to do. I was making money. I was still bartending on the side, which, back then my salary, my entry level salary was $24,000 a year, which is crazy. And I'm making $1,000 a week bartending. Nothing added up really. And
Yeah.
I kept, and I was in that, 24-ish age range after about a year or so working at the real estate development firm. And again, I wasn't carrying out what I knew I could do or what I wanted to do. I had an uncle who was the dean of a small college in Illinois, who had told me upon graduating high school, you won't get anywhere without a master's. So it felt like the right time. I've gotten, now I've got years of experience. I'm going to take my education to the next level. So I left the real estate firm. I went to grad school full time at Emerson College. They had just launched the integrated marketing communication program. So we were one of the first ones that were in it at that school. And I did that full time while still bartending full time at night. And I loved it. Again, I loved school. If I could go back to school one more time to get a PhD, which I realized would make me a glorified librarian, but it's something about learning. And I loved grad school so much. And I did so well at it. I was maybe a B student before. Grad school, I'm a straight A. I'm getting it. I'm following it. I'm loving it.
Well, you were more, you knew what you wanted. You were more mature, older, ready for it. Timing is everything.
Yeah.
And what you were studying was right in your wheelhouse.
It was. And the interesting thing was through the IMC program, where I was so trained in PR, they taught me other aspects of marketing like sales and branding. And, digital was just starting to kind of be a thing. And so I really felt like, okay, I have this nucleus of knowledge and expertise, and now I'm just making everything bigger. While I was there, in consumer behavior, I was in a group project with Irini Marcos, who's a
Yes,
fellow.
it's
Yeah.
Suffolk. Yes.
Yep. So we went to grad school together.
Wow.
Same thing, graduated grad school. And I'm thinking, I am so hireable now. I mean, I've got it all. And just the same thing. I went back to every PR firm because I just knew that that's what I was good at. And they all told me no. They just said, you don't have any PR firm experience. And it was just this hamster wheel where I would feel so good and in an instance feel like I knew nothing.
You were so good, they just didn't know it. And also that it points out two things, like you tell a great, and you said you're good at storytelling clearly, the importance of that educational journey, but then also some of the dysfunction in the hiring process, their inability to detect talent. And I think I've seen that my whole career, and you're pointing out you as a perfect example.
Yeah. And I wish I could say it ended there too, but it didn't. So I came out of school and I couldn't get, I couldn't get a job. So I said to myself, well, I have these skills now. What can I do? So I volunteered to help with the PR for Special Olympics was doing a Jingle Bell Run up near me. And I said, I need to just do what I love to do, and I'll do it for anybody that will allow me to do it. So I volunteered and I did that. And while I was there, I met somebody who had just started a digital marketing firm, which again, we're talking about 2004, 2005. It was so new, to build a website. It was like $125,000. There was no content management systems. There was no WordPress. There was no Wix. But it was at least a step in the right direction. It was a small startup. And I worked there and I learned a lot about websites, email, as that started to grow. I started to understand that aspect. So while I wasn't doing PR, I was still doing marketing and I really liked it. But again, I was still missing something. I still felt like I'm getting by, not thriving. Do you know what I mean? Like
I know exactly what you mean.
So I kept trying the whole time I was working there. I kept trying. I went to every PR firm. I mean, at that point, I'd had years of experience. I knew things that publicists didn't know because I'd been working in digital marketing. So I knew how to design a website. Did I know how to build one? No, I didn't know how to code, but I understood how they worked. I understood the internet. I understood all of those things. I'm thinking I'm going to get plucked this time around. Nothing. Same thing. No PR firm experience meant no job. Instinct didn't matter. Portfolio didn't matter because I built at that point. I mean, we didn't have, the internet was new. I had a binder like this thick, like one of those 3-ring binders.
Yep.
I put all of my work in it and I would carry it around like an eager marketer, just holding it and expecting to drop it on somebody's desk.
You didn't talk to the places I was working, Kim. I didn't know you then, but I would have detected the talent right away and said, hire her.
That was really like, it was so disheartening. And I tell this story to students to try to explain to them that it doesn't have to be that way. I was very disheartened. So finally one day I said, all right, if they're not going to do it, I'm just going to do it, which was really scary. But one day I left the digital marketing firm and I decided to go out on my own and start my own PR firm, which was really hard because not working in a PR firm, I didn't have those media contacts. I was starting from scratch and the media didn't know who I was, but I was determined at that point. I just said, there's blockage in where I want to go. So when you can't go through a door, you go through a window. So I started Ring Communications. And the first few years, it was just me trying to figure out how to build up clientele, how to prove to the media who'd never gotten a pitch from me really before that I was qualified to do it. And the way that I did that was at that point, social media, we're going back to 2007, 8, that had started to kind of come around. And I understood it because I worked at the digital marketing firm. So I leveraged it. And I would go on Twitter during Bruins games and Red Sox games. And I would go on Twitter almost all the time because that's where the media was. They took to Twitter very, very early on and just started connecting with people organically, making these connections and talking to people. And then they kind of started to know my name. Problem was, it was also 2008 was also a recession. I started Ring Communications in 2007.
Yep.
So as I was doing that, I still needed, to form some kind of income other than the bar. I was trying to build clients. I knew that was going to take time.
Mm-hmm.
And same thing. I hit the road with even more experience and all of these things. And I interviewed it. When I tell you I've interviewed probably at every PR firm in Boston with the exception of a few handful, maybe. And the same thing, and at that point I didn't have a car. So I just remember like walking to the train station, walking from the train to this PR firm or this PR firm and still kept getting told no.
Pounding the pavement. This is a story in ambition, in determination, in entrepreneurship. I mean, amazing case study. And the rest is history, as they say, Kim.
It is because I tell the students this too. I didn't get my first real client. I did a lot of free work, but I was willing to do the free work at that point. I was willing to do any free work for any clients that would let me at least build up a portfolio. So
you hustled.
I kept that. I said, all right, fine. I kept getting discouraged, but I would say, all right, got to keep going. You can't take 12 steps back. You got to take 12 steps forward. So I kept going. I did a ton of free work. And in that free work, I got my first big client who took a chance on me. They were a restaurant group in Boston and they stayed my client until the pandemic shut everybody down. And so I started building slowly. I had 2 clients and I was like, okay, I'm the main form of income was still the bar, but I was like, okay, companies take 5 to 6 years to take off. I'm on the right track. Keep your head up, keep going. While I was doing that, a friend of mine was working at Staples and she had 2 little girls, my very best friend, and her quality of life was starting to go down because she was spending, an hour and a half commuting in, hour and a half commuting out. She was getting home, her daughters were in bed, and it was, she started to feel the weight of that. And so one day she came to me and said, I'm going to leave Staples and I'm going to help you build Ring Communications, which was great. Because at that point I said, okay, I have help now, and I have help from somebody who knows me, knows what I'm trying to do, believes in me. So we kind of joined forces and we started thinking, and we did the whole like, okay, who can we ask for business kind of thing. And it's a really great story. He's a polarizing figure by all means, but she grew up in the same small town in Maine as UFC president Dana White.
Wow.
Bringing the UFC back to Boston for the first time in like 5 years or something. And he had said to her, like, what are you up to these days? Where are you working? And she said, I'm helping my friend. And that was in August of 2013, I remember. So yeah, it's 10 years ago this summer. And he said, you know what? I'll throw you guys some work. I'll give you a shot.
Jeez.
And it was that shot that really put me on the map. Like he gave me the opportunity to prove that I knew what I was doing. And I delivered. And he says that all the time, which is the most important thing. We didn't take advantage of the opportunity because it was a friend of a friend. I was given the opportunity to prove myself. She and I showed up. We worked super hard. And then that opened the door going forward. I've been working with the UFC since that day, but by working with a global, well-known brand, he then, and his entire team then, opened up doors because people saw that I worked with the UFC. So if the Gronkowski brothers needed something, my name would get thrown in, or Pedro needed something. So that door ended up opening a ton of doors. And from 2013 on is really when Ring Communications took off.
So many observations, great story, amazing story, very inspirational story. I think I knew you through Twitter back in the day. It's funny when I started teaching at Suffolk and recognized that you were teaching, I said, I know her. I don't know if I've told you this, but I know it was from Twitter back in the day because I was very active on Twitter from the very beginning. And I remember your presence, and I don't think we ever connected again until we worked at Suffolk, but I saw a lot of people from the Boston area and knew pretty much who were the players on social media and PR. I've been in the marketing industry forever, about 20 years longer than you. So I had the 20 years before the internet and then watched the emergence of the internet. You kind of started right at the emergence of the internet, but I remember you at the emergence of the internet on Twitter. So it's funny. Now we work together as colleagues at Suffolk. Also the sports connection. I have seen you and I, again, haven't had these kind of conversations. We chat and we've done a little bit of work together, but not deep conversation. I didn't know all of this story. I did know you were involved in sports quite a bit with sports PR, sports marketing, and now you're explaining it was the UFC thing. And I do notice that you know quite a few people in Boston that are pretty well connected, and that's important, isn't it? Knowing the right people.
It is. I mean, I tell the students this all the time, right? One person can give you an opportunity that changes the trajectory of your future. So that's why it's important to have a big network, because if one person can make that happen, imagine if a bunch of people can make that happen. So it's been awesome because I've built, my network over the years. And it's funny because 7 years ago, when you talk about your network, I got a message from Irini, who I went to grad school with, on LinkedIn, who was teaching at Suffolk, and said, hey, we've noticed that you are an early adopter of social media. We're looking for somebody to teach. Would you ever teach a class? And so a connection I made in grad school is what brought me to Suffolk, which is where my path has kind of shifted. I still do PR very lightly, but I started finding my real purpose teaching, because I felt like, and I still feel like, I can change the path for so many students so that they don't have to go through what I went through, which is why I'm so diligent about giving them experience, putting them in front of clients, giving them opportunities. And while PR is still my trade and I'm still good at it, I still do it, but there's so much more behind what I'm doing at Suffolk now. And I owe that to Arini, and I tell Arini that all the time. I say everything I have at Suffolk right now is because of you. And I tell the students that that's why it's important to make those connections and build your network and make sure you have good relationships, because it's those relationships that will help you figure out who you are and where you're supposed to be.
Two things I hear distinctly, and I was trying to jot them down, but I can go back and replay this, and I might quote you on social media or clip some of these highlights. And number one, I want Irene to hear what you're saying about her. High praise, and she absolutely, it shows, has gave you the opportunity, and rightly so. So good for her, and good for you taking advantage of that opportunity. The lesson you're teaching students, I didn't get down the whole quote, but I can go back again, but that you can change the path of their lives so that they can learn almost from, not with lessons you learn the hard way. They hopefully won't have to learn those lessons the hard way. They might still have to, they have to realize there's a few bumps and bruises. It's not necessarily a straight and narrow upwards trajectory for everybody. But if they learn from professors, role models, inspiring people like you, Kim, they can get there faster, quicker, etc.
Yeah. And hopefully, and I think being raised by the generation we were raised by, right? My parents were older. It was kind of keep your head down, hustle, take what you can get,
Yeah,
don't complain too much, don't do anything like that. And I'm glad our students think a little bit differently than we did, because I think that's kind of just how I was taking everything. You told me no at a PR firm, fine. But then it was until I took the power myself and said, all right, this isn't working for me. I can change my own path. So I think that we play a crucial role in them having the confidence to be able to do that. I was never given that confidence. It was always like, oh, you didn't get it. Oh, well, you weren't ready, or, oh, well. And I'm hoping that this next generation doesn't have to feel that way. You have the power, you have the strength, you have the ability to build the future you want, not take what is handed to you.
yeah,
if that makes any sense.
totally. And if you feel that way, I like to double down on that feeling, because I had it and then some, and it's a lot of what I talk about in my book. That back in the day, I, like you say, thought, I didn't have that self-confidence and didn't believe, and actually didn't see anyone giving me breaks or mentoring me and saying, hey, here's somebody, I want to introduce you to, and they have a great job for you. It just did not happen that way. I had to scratch and claw and learn the hard way in different ways than you, but the same experience, that it wasn't easy. And if we as professors can show them the way, and also instill in them that confidence, that self-esteem, that hopefully, it's a good feeling to know you're making a difference in the next generation. We have limited time, so I want to make sure we touch some of the most important bases. You've already mentioned Suffolk University and Suffolk, you finding your calling. And I have similar feelings about teaching, but this is about you today, Kim. I want to hear you share what you mean by that. I can relate. It's a very fulfilling, rewarding experience to be in front of students, have them listening to us, and knowing we can make a difference in their lives. Can you expand on that? What you mean by you found your calling?
Yeah, it really, I think about the first class I taught, and I loved it. Like, I felt, again, because I always liked school, I felt like I was learning alongside of them. I felt like I was, getting better, and I could see results. Like, of course I can see results. If I pitch a news story and it gets in the news, that's great. Somebody gets richer, great. But for that, it was different. I could see the direct results of what I was instilling in these students. I could see them exceeding. I could see them feeling better about themselves. I hired one of my first students 7 years ago. She was with me through the pandemic. She was with me forever. And I started kind of doing that. I would see these exceptional students that were looking for jobs. And I would say, when they graduated, do you want to come work over at my firm? And over the years, I hired so many Suffolk students, and because I could see the direct result of what they were learning and what they were experiencing. And I felt that close to them. If I could have hired them all, I would have hired them all, you know what I mean? But I couldn't. And I think that was always frustrating, you know what I mean? Like, I wanted to give all of them an opportunity. So that made me realize that while PR is a job, teaching was my passion because of the students. It became all about the students. The challenge every day wasn't putting money in my bank account or getting the next client. It was having the majority of students at the end of a semester say, I really learned something. This was a great class. This was thank you. I feel very prepared. And the more that filled my soul, the more I gravitated towards it. I became almost like I'm hungry for it.
Yeah, you fed off of it.
Yeah. And I think that's how you and I are very similar, is that I always say it's not over till it's over. I give my everything to every semester because I want every student at the end of it to feel smarter, stronger, happier, bolder. And that fuels my fire.
I'd like to see us together someday in the classroom. We're going to be, and we have been close, nearby. I can feel the energy. But between the two of us, yeah, we'd make a dynamic duo.
We would,
if I do say so myself. I agree. That energy, it ain't over till it's over. Inspiring them, we get as much out of it, maybe more than they do. Although we want them to get more. That's what we're there for. It's our passion, but it's our obligation, our responsibility to make sure they're leaving our classroom with everything they need and more to succeed. What about teaching in terms of the subjects that you teach? What, besides inspiring them to be great professionals, great human beings, is there anything specific you teach that you like to focus on and you think is most important to them in terms of subject matter?
It depends on the student, right? So I only started recently teaching the earlier classes. I was always, the very topic specific. So social media marketing was the first class I taught. And then they started adding, digital marketing fundamentals and integrated marketing. So those classes are unique because I feel as though I'm giving them portfolio work and tactical skills. It's not theory, it's practice, right? So I feel very strongly about when my students take those classes, they're going to have work to show an employer. They're going to know how to do these things and that. As I started teaching the younger students, the freshmen coming in or early in their career, it wasn't so much the subject matter. I mean, it is a little bit, but it was more, hopefully I was teaching them kind of some life skills that would help them succeed in their other classes. When you and I teach the same class, and they're not all marketing majors, some of them are finance majors, but we're the first impression that they get. So if they leave our class feeling like, wow, I think I could be a good student. Wow, I really liked learning. Wow, I really like Suffolk. Or I've had some students say, because of you, I really liked marketing. The goals with those classes are different. And I think while I love teaching social media, I love teaching digital. I also love teaching those because they have to keep me on my toes because everything changes so quickly.
Yes.
I find myself always staying on top of my own craft. Again, there's something to be said about these younger students that if you can take a 17-year-old or an 18-year-old and make them enjoy their time in a classroom, that's really the core of whatever I teach. That's the core, the skill set, the knowledge that wraps around. But the core is, can I get these students to want to learn, to enjoy learning,
Yeah,
to want to work hard, to believe that they have the ability to do that?
that's a win-win. And you're right, because early on in their educational journey, if the professor can inspire them, obviously we're there to teach. That's our responsibility, our obligation. But so that said, that's a given. If we can inspire them and teach them to enjoy what they are learning, they're going to learn more because they enjoy it, and they're going to be, you know, more prepared the more they learn for
Right.
the real world. And it's funny how I love hearing everything you're saying. I'm hanging on every word, because again, we have similar approaches. We have, I think, similar feelings, similar, like I say, approaches towards teaching. But I'm learning a ton just from listening to you, Kim, and you're very inspiring. You really are. You're
Thank you.
extremely inspiring. Who inspires you? You can't, I don't think, necessarily wake up every day and say, you know, I'm there. I'm on it. I'm on top of every single thing. I mean, we all have to be to some degree, but there must be, I think, something or someone, or maybe plural, that gets you going, that lights your fire. Can you share any either people or resources or anything that where you go
Yeah.
to fire you up?
Yeah, so growing up, my dad was like my hero, right? He was a police officer. He started his own business, he was a photographer. He started his own little like photography business out of our house. He dropped out of high school, but at the age of 50, went back, got his diploma,
Wow.
went to college, and started, he was a Cambridge cop. And in one night he was sitting on a park bench in the middle of the, housing projects that he used to patrol. And he sat with 6 kids on a bench and, said, "I'm tired of locking you kids up. I'm tired of seeing you throw away your futures. If I started a boys and girls club, would you be interested?" And with those 6 kids, he found a basement in a church in Cambridge, and started the Cambridge Boys and Girls Club, which he then proceeded to grow. He got grants from Tip O'Neill. My mom worked there at one point. And it really changed the lives of a lot of kids. And it was this kind of inspiration it always had to me that my dad was able to constantly rebuild and do this stuff. And he was my biggest fan.
Wow.
He stood in my corner at every point. And when he passed,
Mm.
I don't know, it was like he had a very long and hard illness. And when he passed, it was this rocket fuel, for lack of a better term. I said to myself, I need to go as hard as I can in his honor, and my mom's honor too. They were such hard workers and they did such a good job. That was really like my turning point for me. I said, have I really been living and doing everything that I can possibly be doing right now? Am I living life to the fullest? Am I giving my career my all? Am I doing all of that? And that inspires me to this day. Every day I think to myself, the resilience I saw, the dedication I saw. I mean, he wasn't a perfect man, but all of those things that I saw, I need to carry on. All right. I need to have the best life I can, the happiest life I can. I need to give it my all. I need to, be tired at the end of the day because I exert all of my energy and all of my efforts and all of my talents. But really, what inspires me to do that, yes, it's my dad, but what inspires me to do that are our students.
Yeah. Yep.
We just had graduation on Sunday, and I'm having parents come up to me and say, thank you for everything you did for my son. I've heard your name so many times. You are amazing. My son, my daughter, that, they talked about was you. And that inspires me to continue living that way. Cause life can get hard, and I could easily turn around one morning and say, well, I don't have my dad and I don't have this, and might as well just, go back to bed, or, you know what, I'm going to phone it in today. But I don't, because at the end of the day, there are 70 something students that need that same rocket fuel.
OMG, Kim. That is, your dad, I know, was proud of you while he was alive, and he would be even more proud of you to hear that story. I mean, that is an amazing story. And your dad sounds like he was a remarkable man. The apple doesn't fall far from the tree. Your mom and dad did a great job with you, Kim. But you've obviously, you're self-made as well. You hustled, the school journey, the entrepreneurship, and now the teaching. Wow. I'm envious. I haven't been to a graduation yet. I have to go to one of them to see the students actually, commence the rest of their lives and to meet their parents, etc. That must have been very fulfilling for you. I mean, I have tears in my eyes a little, Kim. That story was very emotional. I mean, so where do I go from there? Professional one. We're running out of time. I want to respect the hard stop.
5 minutes. We got plenty of time.
How about any professional resources, mentors? You might have already mentioned, Irene, of course, and Suffolk in general, but any other outlets professionally, or open question, anything else that is part of your life that you want to work into this conversation?
Yeah, I'm always going to be really grateful for Dana White at the UFC. I mean, like I said, he's a very polarizing figure, but had I not been given that first opportunity from him and my best friend Brenda, that I wouldn't be where I am now. And I always tell the students that when you find somebody that sees your worth, sees your talent, and believes in your ability enough to invest in it, always say thank you. Always remember that person. You may not have a close relationship throughout your life, but always remember the people that got you where you are and gave you those first opportunities. So I, to this day, always think about my very first boss at the real estate development firm for always looking out for me and helping me. I always thank my best friend for, bringing me on this journey. I'll always thank the UFC for all of the opportunities that they've given me. And I've kind of kept this system. I met Martellus Bennett, who was a New England Patriot and started his own, imagination company years ago. And we connected at an event, and I asked him to come speak at Suffolk because he was so inspiring and he had such a unique story that I thought the students would want to hear it. But one of the things I took away from it, I've carried. And he said, instead of having one mentor, he has what he calls a bunch of helicopter mentors. So he's got, a couple mentors that he's super close to, but he also has these resources, right? That he doesn't call every day. Maybe it's once a year he checks in, but he says he keeps these connections kind of hovering around him so that if he has a question about finances or he has a question about this, he's got a bunch of different people to go to. So while I don't know that I necessarily have one mentor now, I have a group of people that I turn to and that I've built connections with, and I have these relationships with that keep me going in one way or the other. And I've carried that helicopter mentality since that day. So I have these people who I may not speak to every once in a while, but if I connect with them once a year, it inspires me, it keeps me going, it fuels me back up. Sometimes life can get very hard, business can get very hard. You can feel a little deflated. And if you've got a lot of those people around who, again, see your worth, know what you're about, want to invest in you, they can pump you up when you feel a little bit deflated. So I got a pocket full of those. My husband has been amazing. He's so supportive of everything I do. When work started to, kind of become, when the work-life balance started to become a little much, he said, maybe it's time to lean out of Ring Communications a little bit and lean into, teaching, because it's
Yep.
it's where your passion is. It's
Yep.
where your heart is.
Hey, one last question. Awesome. And kudos to all those people who are your helicopter resources and your husband. And we need that circle of support. Suffolk in the Hub, it's right there behind you. I can't end this conversation without giving a shout out to Suffolk in the Hub, but you tell our audience what it is, and I'm watching the clock, but you tell me when you have to go, because I'll go, as long as you have time for Suffolk in the Hub. What's that all about?
Very similar to how I started my my agency, teaching students and hearing them over and over and over again saying, no one will give me an internship, no one will give me experience, I'm scared about getting a job. I kind of just did the same thing. I said, well, what if we started a student-run agency? I mean, there's no reason I can't do what Ring Communications does, but teach all of these students how to do it. So I threw the idea out there to them and said, what do you guys think about starting a student-run agency? I'd seen similar models, not completely the same, at BU, Emerson, that they had similar, but not even close to what I thought that they could be. So I threw it out to students, and then the next thing I knew, within a few months, it was up and running, and we kind of just went with it, and we wanted to see where it would go. And so we started it. We started with a few clients that we got out of the Center for Entrepreneurship. And it's been a year now. We're a full service marketing firm. We do everything from social media. We build landing pages. We've designed ads. We've done marketing collateral. It's really been a place where students can get that agency experience that isn't offered to every student that wants it, so that hopefully what they're learning as part of this pilot agency gives them an advantage as they leave school, so that a PR firm isn't saying you don't have agency experience. They do have agency experience now, running it exactly like you and I run our businesses. I'm teaching them how to do that within the school setting while they're learning all the theory, all of that stuff. They're learning the practice. They're getting in front of clients. They're building portfolio work. So we operate like a regular agency. We just do it in Suffolk.
Yeah, that's phenomenal. It's a great opportunity for them. And another example of you being so determined and just making things happen. Kim, you should be proud of yourself. And I'm extremely fortunate to know you as a friend, first and foremost, as a colleague, and now a guest on my podcast, so other people can get to know you. And how can they reach out to you if they want to, touch base with you or ask you questions, et cetera, et cetera?
Yeah, I'm so available. I mean, I'm on LinkedIn, I'm on Instagram, I'm on Twitter. My email's up there in the corner. I'm a message away. That's what I tell anybody. I do my best to try to get back to everybody that emails me. I try to give anybody that asks for 5 minutes, which, fills up my calendar a little bit. But anybody who wants to reach out to me can either email me directly or follow me on social. And before I go, I do want to just say one thing, Bob.
Yeah, please.
You've been praising me this whole time, but you're so similar. And I'm so grateful for your friendship, and I'm so grateful for the support that you've given not only me, but we share a lot of the same students. And to have my students, our students, but to have students in my classroom mention your name and feel just as supported outside of my classroom as they do in other classrooms, that's the key, and I just want to thank you for that.
Thank you. Thank you for saying that. Yeah, I mean, again, a lot of what you're saying, I can totally relate to and feel. I feel myself, but there's only one you, Kim. And you know, again, I thank you for saying that. I really, really appreciate it. The students are awesome. I love teaching. And like you, I feel I have found my calling, and that's thanks to Suffolk University and the couple other places I teach as well. But Kim, amazing story. And I will be sharing this as soon as possible on YouTube and social media and elsewhere. I want to thank you. Is there anything else you want to say as before we say goodbye to our audience?
No, you know what? The only thing I want to say, Bob, is I hope you have a ridiculously awesome weekend.
Kim is referring to, yeah, I hope you have a ridiculously awesome weekend too. Kim, I don't have the t-shirt on for anyone who's seeing this on video, but yeah, that's kind of my catchphrase, and people, I don't know if they're making fun of it or just.
No, it's a good catchphrase.
There you go.
It's perfect, you know. And it was when you said that, it was the first thing that popped into my head. I'm like, I hope he has the most ridiculously awesome weekend, because you deserve it.
Thank you, Kim. You deserve it too, and I plan to. It's going to be ridiculously awesome weather in the Boston area. So I plan to have that ridiculously awesome weekend. Hey, she is Kim Ring, and this is Bob Cargill, Bob Cargill's Marketing Show. And to anybody watching and listening, you know, you might be watching and listening after the ridiculously awesome weekend Kim has, I have, and I hope you all have. But let's just say I hope life is ridiculously awesome for all of you. And I thank all of you for listening and watching to Bob Cargill's Marketing Show. This has been episode 173. I have been talking to Kim Ring, and we both thank you for paying attention to what we have to say. And Kim Ring's story is hard not to pay attention to. Very inspirational, very motivational. And thank you once again, Kim, for being my guest today.
Thank you for having me. This was great.
Thanks, everybody. And I will talk to you again in the near future. Thanks, everybody. Bye-bye.